My family's been in the wine business for 5 generations. My father grew up around that, grandfather, great-grandfather, and the one before that. So been around it my whole life.
I don't remember the first time I encountered wine, so to speak, but I did grow up around my parents drinking wine. My parents had bought property out in Knights Valley, Calistoga in the 80s, so we spent a lot of time just going up and had good family friends in that area. And so after spending so much time up in the country, I knew I wanted to be part of that sort of lifestyle, and winemaking was a good step in that direction. When I came out of Davis, I had already had a couple of internships at Sparkling Winery Gloria Ferrer, so I could go back to school. My first internship in the Valley was at Joseph Phelps, and then I left there to go to Australia in McLaren Vale and came back to Joseph Phelps full-time in '94.
The way that we got started in the wine business was not by owning a vineyard. So we started by buying fruit from somebody. We don't own a winery, so we would go and work at somebody else's winery, custom crush. So our whole growing up in the business has always been that we buy grapes, we bring it to a custom crush winery, we age it somewhere else. We do all these things and we don't own the asset because we could never afford the asset. And so the ability to control the vineyards is more of a relationship with the growers so that we can then drive to the best quality fruit, and a relationship at a custom crush winery so we can drive to the best winemaking, all controlled by Sarah's winemaking, and work orders and people monitoring this going on inside a winery. So we've never been able to start the process by, we're gonna get this piece of dirt, we're gonna plant this amazing clone, and then we're gonna take it to our winery and age it for 100 years. It just, in our model, it doesn't work. A lot of the pricing came from owning a little grocery store where I saw that $15, $20, $25 wine sold. And we weren't trying to make $45 or $100 Cabernet. I was trying to make something that we would end up buying when we were a young couple. Like we would buy $15 in or $20 in because that's what we could afford and that's what was fun to drink. So that was the goal.
The complexity of buying, not your own vineyard is can be challenging, but it is also once you have the relationship with the grower and you still work with a certain site for a certain amount of time. I think having come from, let's say, Joseph Phelps, where it was all estate fruit and it was, quite a luxury to be able to do that, and you really do have control. And I would say then your product is, 80-90% of the vineyard, where here we have to rely a lot on sort of our winemaking techniques, a lot of blending. We spend a lot of time tasting, a lot of time looking at different vineyards, and throughout the year, blending different opportunities. So really, it is a little bit more focused on winemaking.
Honestly, from a winemaking standpoint, what we've done, I think that is different is we show the wines for what the wine should be, varietally correct, balanced wines, not over the top. We don't really follow a trend. We follow the trend of Sarah's original winemaking education and following that, if you would. The best way I could describe it is varietally correct wines made in a classic style. And then as far as the marketing goes, I think the reason that we have a good chunk of millennials that'll buy our wine is because there's actually somebody on the label. It happens to be me, but we could have named the winery Sarah Gott, and I'm sure we'd be in the same place we are today. But it actually gave somebody, there was a human behind this project, and it wasn't just some fancy, I won't even try to pretend a name, but it wasn't some fanciful name with nobody behind it. It wasn't all marketing. There was actually people behind this and creating products that were, authentic.
When the economic downturn occurred, that was actually our biggest growth period, because for us, people went from buying, one bottle of a high-end Napa Cab to buying a case of the Joel Gott California 815 Cab. So it was a big step up for us. We really, and that's where Joel has always been adamant about keeping the price lower and not increasing every year as sort of inflation and everything. And that's where we have to, watch our costs, but we're, out there to make a good product. And obviously you want to turn a profit, but because we don't have the capital investment of owning our own vineyard and our own direct facilities, that we are able to make that happen.
There's all these new wineries. There's 700 and some odd Napa cabs out there. How many people are going to buy a $100 bottle? And you got to do the math. And are you going to be the best? You're going to get the 100 points that, yeah, your wine will sell, but can you repeat it over and over and over?
And there's only so many expensive wines. And I feel like that's where we are very fortunate, where we are able to really compete with our $20 bottle of California Cabernet. And our biggest growth was really when there was the financial crisis and people weren't going to buy a $100 bottle of wine or a $75 bottle of wine. They were going to buy a case of our wine.
For instance, Bandit Wines was created because of the fascination with one of our partners, Roger, with packaging of Tetra Pak's wine business in Italy, and seeing that there was no real alternative packaging movement besides bag-in-the-box here, and to see if the market would accept a Tetra Pak wine. And it has, it's about a 300,000 case brand now. And that was and is all pushed behind alternative packaging, environmentally correct packaging. And that was because of Roger's fascination and his belief that if we could get it into distribution, that people would buy it. And it's taken a long time. We've been making that wine for 10 years now, 12 years now. And it's a long, slow build. So the California Cabernet that we call 815 now, that was created in 1999 because of watching Sarah's winemaking at Joseph Phelps and thinking that, wow, what they're doing is they're taking all these great microclimates from around Napa Valley, blending them together and creating this really complex Cabernet. Could I go out at that point, because Sarah was at Phelps, could we go out and look at the rest of California in microclimates, blend them together, and have something that was amazing for under $20? And it was like one of those aha moments, like, oh wow, the market really wants it. And for the first 10 years we made that wine, we would release a couple thousand cases and it would be bought day one, which was great because we were only doing it was a 1-year cycle. So we could release it right after harvest, get paid, and be able to pay for the grapes for the next vintage. So our relationship with Trinchero started in 2005 when Charles and Roger and I grew that Three Thieves brand, the jug wine. And we had started in 2004 the Tetra Pak Bandit wines. And it grew and grew and grew until we were out of money. Matter of fact, we owed about $800,000 between packaging, bulk wine purchases, and all this stuff. And we got a meeting with the guys at Trinchero, and there was synergy there. They needed some creativity. We needed financial and distribution help. And it was a perfect synergy. So they ended up buying half of that business from us, and it's grown up now for the past, 12 years or so. So it's been an amazing relationship. And then fast forward 4 years later, in 2009, Sarah and I had grown Joel Got Wines into a pretty substantial brand, making 6 or 7 different wines from around California. And my relationship at that time with Trinchero, the president of the company, Bob Torkelson, and Bob would always weigh in on what we were up to at Joel Got Wines. And at one lunch that we had at Go Fish, he proposed this great idea to take the burden off of us, because Sarah and I were starting to feel the effect of being managed by banks and managed by distributors, which really we're in this to make wine. Sarah, from a winemaking standpoint, doesn't want to be managed by how many barrels you're going to buy because of a bank's decision or a distributor not wanting to sell something and we get backed up on inventory or something like that. So Torkelson's proposal was that they would do the heavy lifting for us, the distribution, the accounting, the finance work, and allow us just to make wine, which is the dream. It's a really rare relationship, and it's worked out really well.
I don't think the relationship has necessarily impacted the style of winemaking. It's probably, we've been able to maybe expand and sort of experiment more than maybe we would have felt comfortable doing on our own.
The partnership with Trinchero, I think, works on both sides, for us and for them. For us, it allows us to make wine and focus on that and not have to focus on all the harder things, financing, distribution, inventory, that type of thing. For them, the benefit is packaging creation, winemaking creation, leading them down the road of areas where they normally wouldn't go, or they might go, but not for several years. And it allows them to get into things like with our partner Charles, into the rosé business in Provence from a small vendor relationship that he's grown over the past decade, and allows them to all of a sudden be really meaningful in the rosé business. And then with Three Thieves, with Bandit, jug wine, as well as Tetra Pak wine, things that they wouldn't be doing on their own. So it's a great relationship because they help us immensely, and I think we help them. So it's a balanced relationship. If it wasn't balanced, it wouldn't work. There's the creativity side. You have a million ideas, and one of the problems can be is trying to get somebody as big as Trinchero, right, a 20 million case winery, to follow your one little crazy harebrained idea. So it's a balance. It's a check and balance system. What we think is amazing, they'll give us a long enough lead to let us go out there until we implode. And then likewise, sometimes they give us long enough lead until we find something, and then it really does work.
But Joel is also the ultimate salesman, and he's very
Optimist.
The optimist, yes, but the ultimate. And I think he benefits that company when he's on the road working with sales forces and whatnot. I think people look to him as a strong force there.
I think the metrics, if you're just starting out with small brands, are not to overcommit yourself in inventory. Your metric, because that just takes away from your ability to recreate again. The other things to watch as you're just starting out is your relationship with either a distributor or with your customer, to make sure that you're going to have pull through and you're explaining what you're doing so that it becomes, appealing to either the distributor or the customer. Also, to be able to have that relationship with your growers. As Sarah and I have learned over the years, our lifeline are our growers, because that's where our grapes come from. And so when you're just starting out, to make sure that you've got great communication and great relationship with the grower is important. Just as important as the bank that's going to lend you the money and the distributor that's going to sell the wine, or the customer that's going to buy it.
And also being true to your story. I think you're as you're starting out, knowing the direction that you want to go, not necessarily knowing that that's how we started out. I felt like we were very lucky and started out, and it kind of just kept going with a vision, but not necessarily did we have that clear vision in sight. But being true to what it is that you want to do, and not getting caught up in a trend, I think, because those are so short-lived, and you never know what side you're going to end up on. I don't love the limelight. So for me, I really do love the winemaking part. I love the tasting, I love the blending, and I could just, spend my time doing that. Joel really is, so much better at the sales and the marketing and telling the story. So I don't mind sort of having the back seat and knowing that I'm doing what I love to do, and I don't need to sort of be out there. And he's really the one that manages the public relations and getting the story out.
When we first got started, our attraction to the press was always that we were young and a couple and making inexpensive wine. And then through a couple great articles, New York Times or Wine Spectator, a few of those really set us up for people to look back at us and to write other little stories. But it's always a comparison with us and somebody making something more expensive, which is fine. I mean, that's where we're headed, and that's what we want. We don't really drive much PR out there. We're not out there like beating the door looking for somebody to write about us. I think there's a little bit about just trying to stay in the undercurrent and letting your products, speak for what you do, no matter what you're making. If it's that great, people are going to buy it. And then, we see a little of the natural, organic, if you will, press that way. I think today's market, you compete with so many more brands and wineries out there. The brand thing, one winery can have 50 brands. And so I think the competition's a lot greater that you compete with. We see that, you saw that with Pinot Noir. Was it 10 years ago, there was 50 Pinot Noirs at a big store, a big wine shop. Now there's 200. So, we're in and around this, the evolution of where the market's going. All the people we work with are all the people we want to work with. All the wines we make are the ones we want to make. We're kind of in a lucky situation that what we get to do is what we want to do, and we're not doing something, It's not like I could look back and think like, God, I wish we were at a different distributor. Or, you know, I'll take it back. You know what? The one thing I would...
Now, the distributor talk.
Well, no, but it's so important, you know, especially for students. So the one thing I would change is about 10 years ago, we changed our distributor in California, and we managed it completely incorrectly because I got into the business mode and I didn't pay attention to the people that cared about the wines that we're selling. It's not like they're out selling tires or something. They don't care. They're selling, you know, a passion and a story about, you know, us, and we didn't manage that correctly. So that'd be the one thing I would change in our business history, is to always remember that when you go to change a distributor or a grower, it's better to be straightforward and honest and manage it as if it was a family member or a friend. One of the hardest things in Napa Valley is the land price, grape price. At a certain point, there's only so many grapes that are going to come out of this valley, and there's only so many people that will drink that amount of expensive wine. So how many people out there are going to buy a $100 bottle of Napa Cab? How many people are going to buy a $200 bottle, a $300, a $700 bottle? And there's some great stuff in this valley, like Harlan. I mean, if you think about what that's done for the wine industry, it's an incredible benchmark for California-made wines. I think it's completely possible for people to still create Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley, everywhere. And it takes people. It takes people's creativity and looking at it slightly different and being true to their vision of they want to make wine for whatever reason. I mean, there's some cool stuff. There's like Massican, you know, taking strange white varieties from all around the valley, and stuff like Sauvignon Blanc, and small production, great label, and really well-made wines. You know, it's all that creativity.
There's always room for creativity and new, and it also keeps everybody on their toes. I mean, you know, 15 years ago, I felt like that was sort of like the new Napa Cab, and now it's more about different varieties, and that's where, you know, going back to the Phelps days when we had exposure to all those varieties, it was so much fun. But I mean, they couldn't sell their Grenache Rosé in the mid-90s to, you know, really save them. And we loved that wine, and it was great, but he was way ahead of his time. So I think that's when the market is ready for these new things, you know, people have to get out there and take advantage of their new ideas.
So the skill sets that you need if you're going to move forward with starting your own brand is, number one, wine. Wine quality is everything, at least for Sarah and I. That's the only reason ours works. Number two is a little bit of business understanding. You know, you're gonna have a bunch of money parked in inventory, and then you gotta get out and sell it. I think a lot of people might be great winemakers, but then they miss that next piece of actually having to sell it. It'd be great if everybody bought everything off a mailing list, but if that's how it's gonna work, then you better be a damn good writer. You know, so it's just understanding what are all the different pieces that you're gonna do, from the winemaking to the business to where's the money gonna come from. Where is it going to go to that consumer? Entrepreneurial spirit is everything. When you start anything, especially in the wine business, because you have so many different pieces that you need to manage, and you got to be creative.
The grape growing and the wine business, it's not banking necessarily. You can't put it into a certain structure or box. Every year is different, like we talked about, and you have to be able to sort of roll with that as well. And you can't the relationships, as we've mentioned, are so important. So it's not just the contracts, and it's not just, you know, based on a calendar. You really do have to be flexible and, you know, what I guess you would be the entrepreneurship ideal.
Honestly, I think what keeps us up at night is making sure that all of our team is growing, and that we have the right team assembled, and that we're headed the right direction as a group. Because we're kind of one big family. We're an oddity in the wine business. We're a big company, and we're 25 people. You know, we're like an extended family when we should be a couple hundred people. So that's probably what keeps us up the most, you know, making sure the team's good.
I'm sleeping better nowadays, but there are moments, we've got 3 kids, that you don't sleep. But I think it's the management of people and being sure that your team is content and safe and doing what they're supposed to be doing.
The best thing for us with the kids will be is if somebody is actually interested in winemaking or in management or sales or something is give them the opportunity, but not force them into it. I think in the Valley here, you've got a lot of kids that have fallen back to the family property after they have, gone out and tried something else and maybe wasn't as good as the lifestyle here. Lifestyle here in Napa Valley or Northern California in general, Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, all of these areas is so great. So it's kind of hard not to want to be here. But then again, Sarah's biggest worry is always that we force one of the kids in and that you will be a winemaker or you will be a manager. Give them the opportunity, see if they want to do it or not.
Or that they think that that it's a given, that they can just do it. So that success, we never thought that we would be in the position we are in, and we feel so fortunate. And some of that I know is luck and timing, but it also is a lot of hard work and vision and dedication, and just being able to, have good relationships. So I think the success with relationships, whether it's your employees or your distributors or your growers, that's sort of what's made us what we are today.
And if their businesses do work, right? So if you're just getting in the business and you can look, 10 years down the road and you still have a group of employees that have been with you for 10 years, that's like the ultimate win.
I still want to be involved and know what's happening, but they're really directing as long as, the final product is what we're all aiming for. We know what that is, letting everybody find their path a little bit. Joel really is good about being sure, people are heard a lot and managing them as the whole team and making people feel like it's, part of the family.
I think for us, leadership, honestly, because of the family orientation of the business, is giving everybody a fair turn to speak their opinion, give people opportunity to grow. We've got a couple team members that, are probably doing more than they would have if they'd been somewhere else. So that's always the win. So leadership, give a chance and see if it goes far.
Having great employees makes you smile. Knowing that people are really working their hardest for something that they love as much as you do, and that is huge. And then being able to drink your product that you love too is, having that glass of Sauvignon Blanc at night.
What makes me smile is the interesting characters that get into this business. There's so many, extreme opinions and extreme way that people come at it. And so just to be around that type of business environment's great. We could be, making widgets and a bunch of boring scientists, right? And this is a great area because you get a bunch of personalities. So that's probably the best part.